So Stephen Kelly, Creative Director of C21 Theatre Company. We're standing here in the Duncairn Arts Centre in North Belfast, and I am 6'2", blue eyes, middle-aged man, athletic build, wearing a dark navy polo shirt and dark navy jeans. I guess we started out in 2005, and the purpose was initially that we would be given performers and writers in Northern Ireland a platform to showcase their work. That changed slightly because the creative director role changed for us, and it was initially Peter Quigley, and then I came to the fore in 2011, 2012. And I wanted to put more emphasis on outreach, and so we added an educational kind of wing to the company, where we did pared down Shakespeare work for about 4 or 5 years. Eventually that was a big success, but eventually we realised that it wasn't as cost effective as we wanted, and we wanted to move on to different areas, to look at other areas where we could generate income, essentially. But when we started out, as I say, it was to give performers and writers a platform. And I think we still do that to the day, and I think that's important as well, that you look back and you think, how far are you away from the initial vision or mission that you set out? And I don't think we're too far away from it. I think the big thing that for us is, I have to talk about capacity within the workforce as well, within our kind of environment, and what we have and what we don't have. And for a lot of the time, it's been a one-man show, just myself, and having to look at filling out application forms, and at the same time thinking as an artistic director, thinking of strategies and different things like that. And then also, when we come to do a show, that I have to be in the room as a director. When I'm in the room with the cast and crew, sometimes I would be asked administrative questions. So that comes with problems as well, because I don't have time and you're trying to think artistically, and that isn't ideal. So ideally we would have maybe 2 or 3 more staff members, which we don't really have at the moment. But I guess short term, if we did have that, suppose I could be thinking of a 3-year plan, or even beyond that, which is a bit of a luxury at the minute. Having partnerships on board has enabled us definitely to be more artistically free, because the main thing is it generates more income. So when more income comes into the company, then it means that I'm kind of freed up a little bit. One of the main areas that we covered with extra income that has come in lately is that we brought on a administrator part-time. So that has been a real blessing, and it just has freed me up a little, but it means a lot. It means then I can really think artistically and think creatively going forward, even over the next 12 to 18 months. And that means a lot. It means I don't have to deal with a lot of the questions and a lot of the queries, filling in application forms. I don't really have to do that as much, which is fantastic. And I can bounce ideas off the administrator, and it's somebody there working with me, whereas before I never really had that. So that makes a big difference. So as far as capacity is concerned, an example of that would be where we had a space in Cityside in Belfast here in the retail centre recently, and just before lockdown. So unfortunately we had to give that space up because there was overhead still there, and there was no income happening at all. So all our income just stopped at that particular point in March 2020. So we had made great headway there, because we had kind of created a stage. We had brought the carpenter in who'd done quite a lot of work. We had screens, etc. done, and then unfortunately we just had to close it down. So it meant that I was making progress. I had got a couple of people working around me. We had volunteers involved, and we were going forward. They loved the idea of the space. It was a creative hub. We rehearsed in there. We were going to perform in there, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So I had to then revert back to what I had done previous to that, which was working from the office at my home. And I think the big thing about that is as well is that because we are only project funded, we aren't annually funded, so we didn't have extra money to make that space work. Our projects only ran, once a year or twice a year, and that's all we were funded for. Whereas any other part of the year, we would be able to engage with local authority or engage with private sponsorship. That all came to a head because of lockdown. So that really had a big impact on us, and then the capacity then went from potentially being 4 or 5, including maybe 1, 2 volunteers in there, back to me again. In 2019, when we took a show to Australia, we toured a show, a one-woman show around homelessness set in Belfast, and there was a squad, including the writer, of 4 that went to Australia, and that was a big success for us. It was quite hard to get it happening, the mechanics of that, but we got there, and we had a great help from our funders to make that happen. But after that happened, and we went to Melbourne and we performed at that National Celtic Festival and beyond, we wanted to take that further. We wanted to think about America, because there was interest from Washington at that point, there was interest from New York, and we wanted to take that further. But I was finding that I was being bogged down to try and make that happen again. And I'm thinking, if our capacity was much bigger than me, or maybe the other one person that we have, these things would be happening much easier, and we would just be maybe going like that instead of just like that. So to broaden the horizons, I think that's when I saw that our capacity, if it was much bigger, we could be, you could be touring all parts of the world, but I haven't given up on that yet. And then off the back of that, we represented Northern Ireland at the Brussels platform as well in 2020. That was February 2020, and that was just before lockdown happened. So I think if the capacity was larger, we can move much quicker. It takes a longer time when it's reduced. To start with, we're talking about energy or motivation. I think there has to be passion. We're not going to earn £1 million overnight in this industry. Most of us aren't anyway. So I think there has to be something here, I think, and because I kind of created the brand, and because I created the logo, if you like, it means so much more. I mean, it's in our house, it's our family. Now this is it's an appendage. It's always there. C21 figures, around, in the estate I live, there's kids know that we perform, we do summer schools with kids. So it's a real strong brand. And I think, I always go back to the live performance. When I trained as an actor, I always go back to that buzz of a live performance. And then as I move through being a performer, going into being a creative director, producer, then one thing that stood out for me was seeing people's reaction from a live performance. And I think that is what kind of keeps me, that's kind of what keeps me going and keeping that drive going. Especially when I always go back to, we did a few pantomimes in Ballymena over the years as well. And seeing some of those children sitting in those front 2 or 3 rows who may never have seen a live performance, never mind a panto before in their lives, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, and just seeing their reaction when the performers that I've helped to put on stage have had that impact, and it's just that, that real reaction. So I guess things that got there. What keeps me going beyond that? I think that passion is definitely there, and I think I've always had an eye to international touring, and that's part of our vision as well. And I'm always thinking about America, or thinking of maybe the Far East, and Australia. I'm very close to Australia as well. I've been out there 3 times now. I went out 2015 by myself to just weigh things up, and did a couple of master classes and stuff out there. I have a great relationship, and then we were lucky enough to take the show back. So I think I'm ambitious. I think I am ambitious, and that's important. And you have to be. It's not all about talent in this industry, as we know. There's a lot of talented people I know who have fallen off the wayside. It's about the drive. And if you have that drive and a little bit of talent even, then you can go places in this industry, And I think, that would be something I would always revert back to. Well, I think when you talk about sustainability, you have to be thinking about collaboration. I think collaboration is key, and I'm always knocking on doors. I'm always striking up conversations. As recently as, 20 minutes before this interview, I was on the phone to one of the local authorities, talking about a potential project or site-specific, something that we could do. And I think that's important. I think moving forward and having something like that running parallel to your organisation is key, especially for us who we're not annually funded. We're project funded, as I said. But to be thinking of these partners in the public and the private sector, and going on to the private sector, we've been very, very fortunate that we have worked with Dodge Shipping Group from like 2013. It's almost coming up in 10 years. It's unheard of in this industry. It's a very, very unique situation. I'm aware of that. But I would like to think that Dodge Shipping Group gets a lot back from our relationships, and I know that other private organisations are looking in with a little bit of envy. And that's natural. I think that's natural. And more recently, we've been working with Conswater Shopping Centre and looking at putting installations in there and doing a community project within a shopping centre. So I think the collaboration is key. I think it's key and moving forward and to be able to sustain. Obviously, we would like to be in the position to be annually funded from the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. I'm not saying we wouldn't. That would be a beautiful situation. But and thinking back even over the last 2 or 3 years, most of our annual turnover, grant funding figures in maybe 40% of that. So it's quite a low figure. So I've had to then work probably extra hard to build that funding up to make sure that we are, sustainable. But I would say, private investment, sponsorship, we would get some in kind, a little in cash as well from our sponsor, which is the core of the organisation. I can't deny that. That is the core. I mean, to give you an example of the in kind sponsorship that Dodge Shipping Group would give to us would be, we can store sets within the docks area of Belfast. I mean, that's unheard of. To be able to do that in kind is amazing, because to pay that, we all know how much money that would cost to be able to store sets. So we're very, very fortunate. But going forward, I think that that model has always kind of been in my head, where I should always have a partner or a silent partner, something in my head that say, look, for the next 12 months, if I can engage with Antrim Newton Abbey Council, Mid and East Antrim Council, or whatever it is, or Belfast City Council, alongside our project funding, then we are sustainable. It's not really where I want to be. I would like to be annually funded, and it would be so lovely to have 3-year funding in place to be able to say, I can plan as an artistic director for 3 years, no problem, and here's what we're going to do. And more or less, we do that to a certain degree, but there's not a lot of security at the moment going that far ahead. Suppose the other thing would be trust funds. We're looking at trust funds. We have worked with the likes of Halifax Foundation, which has been great as well. And, we're looking at potentially, working more with a National Lottery Community Fund as well. They helped us publish a book in the last 12 months as well around a project we did working with care homes. So they're very interested in striking up maybe a bigger relationship with us, which is very exciting. So if we could get something in there to maybe roll out what we did, because what we did, we only scratched the surface in that project. If we could roll that out across Northern Ireland, and I think, there's huge potential there for us to do that, because we created a nice little model there in that project, and we just don't want to leave. We want a legacy to be left with that project. So yeah, so there's a combination of things there that we just talked about. So I think there's huge potential, but thinking from a theatre company point of view and being sustainable, it's a difficult industry to be in. There's no doubt about that. But moving forward, annual funding is the target. But I'm not going to rely on that. I think you have to be looking at collaboration. You have to be looking at engaging constantly and consistently. I know I did touch on collaboration and working with different businesses, private in particular, I think we do really have to be open. And I know Arts and Business in Northern Ireland are absolutely brilliant for that. But I think all organisations have to be open to that, and that we don't just rest on our laurels and think, I'm going to be secure and get an annual funding in April, and we should be okay with that. I don't think we just sit, we become complacent. I don't think we should do that. I think it's so important, and not only from the arts side either. I think from the business side, I think there's so much to be achieved from a business to engage with an arts organisation. We've seen that. We've seen all the beautiful examples that have come out of those relationships and partnerships. So I think that's key, and I think that going on what we've just witnessed in the last 15, 16 months as well, as far as funding and how proactive the Arts Council were with us, with all the funding that was given out, and hopefully more to be given out as well, because we're not out of this by any stretch of the imagination either. I think there has to be scope for the arts to be taken really, really seriously now, because we look at it, and I know we go back to this, and it's been mentioned a lot, but you think of the entertainment that we had during the lockdown, and the likes of Netflix, and we've talked about this, and how much went online, and how many families were entertained online, as well. I just think, people are maybe grasping now that, yes, the arts matter, and I think, that's a big thing. So let's hope that, the funders can come on board, and we can work with trust foundations, and we can really make, something special happen. But I think it's just all about consistency and trying to treat, the arts industry as any other industry would be treated. And I think that just hasn't quite happened yet, and that the freelance staff are cared for and treated as, valuable members of who are paying tax and doing all that kind of stuff, So, but I just think the industry needs to be maybe taken a little bit more seriously, and we move on from there,